Right, we're hitting up chapter 5 today. I was just sharing before that I was typing up the stuff this morning, and more stuff sort of, just when you see things a second or third time. I read this chapter a number of times earlier in the week, and because I had many more things in my head, I was actually concerned that I wouldn't be able to make heads or tails of this, because it was quite confusing to me earlier in the week until I gave it its focus properly last night, and it all sort of just started falling into place. And it started off with this journey that we're going on. If this is true, what we're looking at, this idea that the visions of Zechariah are progressively preparing the people for the return home, and they're doing it in these stages of chapter 1, preparing the people's hearts, chapter 2, Jerusalem being prepared, chapter 3, the high priest being chosen, and chapter 4, the king being set apart. If that is the journey we're on, then chapter 5 is in the same pattern. If you just the confusion, I've experienced it personally this week, that reading it isolated from the journey of the book brings nothing but confusion. Nothing but confusion. And so you can understand why sometimes the problem with the commentaries and stuff that we read is that they do that. They tend to cut up, and I've got Boyce's Romans commentary there. It's a 6-volume commentary on Romans, and so every single verse gets isolated attention as opposed to seeing it as part of the whole.
And then he starts preaching on the subject that he thinks is
that's in that verse, as opposed to just letting Paul talk about what he's talking about. You would never receive a letter from a friend and do that to it. You would never dissect each sentence of the letter and try and make it into its own issue. You would never do that. We need to do the same thing with the scriptures. And so, if chapter 5 is doing the same thing, then we want to read the 2 visions that are here in chapter 5, asking the question, what is the true focus of the vision? Let's not try to overanalyze the images in the vision, because the text will tell us what the things in the vision are about. The text will tell us, so that we can hone in and get the story that is meant to be coming across to these people. So there's only 10 verses here in chapter 5, so we should theoretically be able to skip through it, but I have included a video in today's, because the issue that comes out of this chapter we need to have a clear understanding on, and the Bible Project do a good video on this issue, so we will look at that just to help us get a picture of what's being said properly. So if we want to hit up chapter 5, someone want to read the whole of the first vision, which is just 4 verses long.
I looked up again and saw a flying scroll.
Flying squirrel?
Scroll. Okay. I looked up again and I saw a flying scroll. What do you see? He asked me. I see a flying scroll, I replied, 30 feet long and 15 feet wide. Then he said to me, this is the curse that's going out over the whole land, for every thief will be removed according to what is written on one side, and everyone who swears falsely will be removed according to what is written on the other side. I will send it out. This is the declaration of the Lord of hosts, and it will enter the house of the thief and the house of the one who swears falsely by my name. It will stay inside his house and destroy it along with its timber and its stone.
Beautiful. That's a fun vision. I've seen people talk about this vision and see this 30 by 15 foot scroll and go, oh, he saw a spaceship.
Ah, that's the Ark. Noah's Ark.
Noah's Ark, yeah, that's a small Noah's Ark. And it grabbed my mind that it's crazy what happens when people try to plug in today's thinking processes into something 3,000 years old. 2,500 years old. Yeah, it's just a testament to the arrogance of the modern mind that it's got to be seen that way. That's why I've purposefully asked this question: what would a scroll indicate to Zechariah? It's fascinating that he doesn't ask anything about the scroll. He doesn't question the scroll in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't even ask, what is this scroll? He doesn't ask that. Nothing. It's the angel that questions Zechariah and says, what do you see? And he answers, I see a flying scroll. He knows what he's looking at. He recognizes it. It is not a strange thing to him. He's able to name it and identify it clearly. So, if he's seeing something that he identifies, what comes in his mind as a Jew that's in exile in Babylon, what does a scroll, what comes to mind for him when he's thinking and seeing a scroll? What issues, what cultural phenomena come along with it that would help us understand what he's thinking about what he's seeing? And it will come out in this. I don't think we can think the scrolls of the law, because they're in exile, and the writings of the prophets sort of come in more predominantly after the return from exile, in the times of the synagogues and the rabbis and those sorts of things. They're a post-exilic thing. There are still copies. I mean, look at what happened during the reign of Josiah. They had no idea of the books of the law until he uncovered them in the basement of the tabernacle, of the temple. You know, I'm just using they had been lost to Israel for a period of time before Josiah discovered them. So the scrolls of the law are a rare thing. They're not well known.
Because they were only for the priests.
That's right. They're not a well known thing. So what is going on in the mind of a scroll for Zechariah? I do think we need to think Babylonian. I think we need to
tell you?
Go for it.
Anybody else want to have a go? No?
I think it's a royal decree.
Not a royal decree. Zechariah would have thought, we're in captivity and this is the law. The law, not the law of God. They're captives. There were three things that scrolls are written for in the Old Testament. On the one side and on the inside and outside, it was written. It was written who had done the thing, what the problem was, but the one thing about this scroll, it is not sealed.
No, that's right. So it's not a redemption scroll.
It's not a redemption scroll, but it's the same kind of thing. It's telling Israel, I've got your name, I've got your number. You're in.
Is it Israel though?
Pardon?
I mean, I can ask the next question. Because the scroll is about a curse over the land.
Yes. And what did they have to? You could sell your land, but you had to write a bill of sale. You could sell the people, you had to write a bill of sale. You take in a slave, you had to write a bill of sale.
Yeah. And that's what this is.
I think that's what this is.
It's a legal document.
It's a legal document that's saying you're in captivity, and the only thing that's going to happen to you guys, I'm going to destroy your houses. I'm going to destroy it because of what you're not changing.
I think they're in captivity, and the curse goes out over the face of the whole land. And so this decree, this bill, this command, whatever it is, that it's doing something to the whole land that is focused on a particular demographic of people. It's everyone who steals and everyone who swears falsely.
So it's getting rid. It's getting rid of all those people that have brought trouble on the land.
Exactly.
You won't be redeemed. You'll just be destroyed.
Yeah.
That's why it wasn't sealed. Why wasn't it sealed? Because nobody could open it.
Yeah. Which is why it's important. Sorry, you got the thought.
Are we talking about land in Babylon or in Israel?
I'm going to let the next vision answer that question, because the two visions are both dealing with the same issue. And so it starts off here And then the second vision answers that question. If you don't mind, I think that'll help. I'd rather the text answer the question than me.
It's a shame that we use the word in the second part of the vision, he who swears.
He who swears falsely,
Falsely, yeah.
I think that is amplified by verse 4, where it says, it expands that. The house of him who swears falsely by my name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people
That's
won't
what
read
that's,
that.
yeah, who
People
don't
will
read, they'll
stop
stop at verse 3.
No, they'll stop it falsely. Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll stop there and go, see?
Anyone that swears. No. This is about saying that you belong to God and not living it. This is about loyalty. It's about lip service being done. This is the problem that the minor prophets have been carrying on about from the beginning. They honour me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And God is saying, I'm going to do away with that. This scroll is describing those who steal, those who are only thinking of themselves, and those who are deceptive in the proclamation of their loyalty to me. It's a particular mindset, isn't it, that when we ask that question, who the focus of the curse is, it's all these people that are deceptive in their operation. A thief is deceptive. They're trying to hoodwink you to get what you have. And someone who's swearing falsely is lying, and then it's expanded by my name, using the covenantal relational name of Yahweh to lie.
It's pointed too, because it's to every house of the thief.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Would they be thinking of the building, or?
No, the people.
It's interesting that verse 4 says it shall remain in his house and consume it, both timber and stone. It grabs the image of a physical house and says everything that is associated with this type of characteristic, I'm going to consume. I'm going to remove.
He's done that before, hasn't he?
He's talked about it like that before.
He's talked about that. What was it in the book in Genesis? Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, and then someone else.
Yeah.
In relation to the people that are speaking falsely in my name, another way of saying it would be these are the false prophets. That's what they're doing.
Possibly.
That's what they're doing. They're saying things that they proclaim are from the Lord, and they're not.
We only just read in Habakkuk, didn't we, as well, about how the people that would go and perform the sacrifice and then go home and worship Molech. So I think that's right, because the minor prophets have been honing in on the prophets the whole way through. But I don't think it's isolated to them. I think it's anyone that is just literally paying lip service to Yahweh and then still living their own way outside of loyalty to him. It's a twisted mentality that's being talked about, that's being addressed. And so with that in mind, what is the main issue for the vision as a whole? If it's, the scroll is a picture of the vision, is a picture of the issue. And we've got a description of the issue. If we were to we've got a focus of it, that it's people who do this. But I've purposefully asked what as opposed to who. Okay, so I'm seeing that verse 3 where it says, this is the curse that goes out over the face of the whole land. So the curse is covering the land, and the way that the curse is covering the land is by dealing with people of a particular mindset in that land.
Make a summary statement and say that you won't get away with this particular crime.
That's right. I think that the reason the land's being brought up, I really do think, is if we're in the context of the return home, I think Yahweh is preparing, he's cleansing the land for the people to come home. He's addressing issues that have been addressed throughout the minor prophets. And he's saying, I'm not going to have you go back only for things to be as they were.
So getting rid of the false prophets.
It's getting rid of all the twisted thinking of Israel from before. And that is starting to fit our pattern. That's starting to fit what we're exploring through these visions.
This is a good 1,000 year. Because what does God do before they get to the new kingdom?
He cleanses
the whole land.
Yeah, but the land is the earth.
It gets its redemption.
That's right.
Romans.
That's right. And so whilst the people with twisted thinking are the focus, the main issue is the cleansing of the land. Because the scroll is going out over the land, and this second vision that we're about to read is going to double it down and really hone in why this is the issue. And there's going to be a specific word that's going to be used that I really want us to have an understanding of. If someone just...
I think that's right, Jared, because it's not the false teachers themselves.
It's everyone that's in that mentality.
More people can be raised up.
That's right.
But the land is his.
That's right.
It's his land.
And it was meant to be a beacon of his character, a beacon of his nature. The people, this is my land with my people in it. My people and the land are going to be the focus point of my glory for all the nations to look in and see and be jealous. That's the whole purpose of it. It's not a either or, it's a both and. And so as we hit verses, does someone want to read verses 5 to 8?
Then the angel who talked with me came out and said to me, lift your eyes now and see what this is that goes forth. So I asked, what is it? And he said, it is a basket that is going forth. He also said, this is their resemblance throughout the earth. Here is a lead disc lifted up, and this is a woman sitting inside the basket. Then he said, this is wickedness, and he thrust her down into the basket and threw the lead cover over his mouth.
Do you mind if I read the ESV as well? Because I think it uses some really interesting words. So mine says from verse 5, then the angel who talked with me came forward and said, lift your eyes and see what this is that's going out. And I said, what is it? He said, this is the basket that is going out. And he said, this is their iniquity in all the land. Uses the word iniquity. And behold, the lead cover was lifted, and there was a woman sitting in the basket. And he said, this is wickedness. And he thrust her back into the basket and thrust down the lead weight on its opening. The New King James didn't use the word iniquity.
Use the word resemblance.
Yeah. That's this. Have we only got New King James, New Living, and ESV?
What verse was that, James?
It was in verse 6.
End of verse 6.
Mine says iniquity.
Okay. What are you reading? HC? Holman?
Holman's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine doesn't use iniquities, it uses filled with the sins of everyone throughout the land.
I don't like that.
What did you say?
Hers uses the word sins.
Yeah, that uses that word quite a lot instead
Yeah,
of anything else.
That's right, because the New Living is sort of it's a paraphrase. It's trying to make it understandable, but in that sense, it's actually confusing the issue because there is a specific word in Hebrew, and there is a connection between the word iniquity and wickedness. There's a language connection between the two words. Do you mind if I show the video now, because I think it'll help save time?
Can I just read something I had a note in my, and it's Psalm 147.
Yeah.
It's talking about cleansing the land.
Yeah.
It's the restoration of Jerusalem's the heading, but that's not what it is. Psalm 147, it was verse 15. And when you read it, this is what we've just been talking about. He sends his commands throughout the earth. His word runs swiftly. He spreads snow like wool. He scatters frost like ashes. He throws his hailstones like crumbs. Who can withstand the cold? He spreads his words and melts them. He unleashes his winds and the waters flow. And so the whole psalm is about what we're reading about, the cleansing of the land.
Mm.
The cleansing of the land is not something we think of.
It can't be about the people, because the people, remember chapter 1 was preparing the people's hearts, was, return to me and I will return to you. I was angry with your forefathers, now I'm not angry with you, but come back to me, come back home in right relationship with me. So, we've already dealt with the issue of the people. We're not revisiting that. That's why I think the focus is the land. I want us to have a clear understanding in our minds, and it's what the New Living has done. It's conflated every bad word to sin, or bad thing to sin. It just calls it all sin, and we've sort of traditionally jumped into that. But the original language has 3 different words for bad things, and I think this video, it does it much better than what I would do, and it gives biblical examples of everything, and it'd be great for us to have this in our minds, and it'll open up both the visions.
Brilliant.
I find it so helpful to think like that. Because it opens this up. We're not talking about a missing of the mark. We're not talking about betrayal. We're talking about crooked thinking.
We have that in the New Testament. We have two words. One meaning missing the mark, one meaning about just living sinful lives.
Yeah,
Choosing to do sin.
that's right. And so the word avon appears twice in this passage. It's in verse 6 where he says, this is their avon in all the land. This is their iniquity. This is their thing. And then the name of the woman in the basket is avon. This is wickedness. The word appears both times there. When we're thinking about that in the context,
What words does yours use?
mine uses iniquity in verse 6 and wickedness in verse 8.
Okay, mine uses iniquity verse 6.
And then in verse 8, when it names the woman,
Wickedness, yeah.
it names her as wickedness. The reason I think it uses the word wickedness is because in Hebrew you can give the word a gender by changing the ending, the last letter in it. And so the name in verse 8 would be the feminine version of avon. So they're going, oh, it is a different word, but there's a relationship between the two. And I love that video pointed out that the word avon is translated as iniquity, wickedness, and sin in our translation. We've got to get to what the original word is. So doing a quick search in Hebrew, and you'll find that iniquity and wickedness are the same word. Just with a grammatical indication, because he's talking about the woman that's sitting in the basket. She's the embodiment of the iniquity of the land. So with all that in mind, how does the start of this vision play out? Keeping in mind the first vision, these two visions are related and they're talking about the same issue. What is this issue? What is the problem with the land that God is cleansing from it? And what does it mean that wickedness is in the basket and that the angel is forcing the basket lid closed on it with her in it? What is going on?
God is going to shut off iniquity and shut it down by closing the lid. That's shutting down.
Yeah. We've had the decree gathering it all together. Everyone that lies, everyone that's in deceptive lifestyles and mindsets in the land is gathered up and compressed into this woman that is being locked in the basket. I've got the question that I haven't put it up here. Who's doing this?
God is.
It's fitting our pattern. God's preparing the people's hearts. God's preparing Jerusalem. God's chosen the high priest, and God's getting the king ready. And now God's cleansing the land. This is God carrying the iniquity of the land. It's not, he isn't making the land carry its own iniquity. He's doing it.
That's why I think our modern concept of they've gone back to the land, it doesn't fit with Scripture. Because it's them who are doing it.
Whereas the message is constantly that God will do it.
God will do it. Because nobody else can do it.
It's
Nobody
not
else is
humanly
righteous.
possible.
The most dedicated Jew, fully committed to Judaism, who has done all he can to keep the law, is not pure enough to cleanse the land.
Why is the lid of the basket lead?
That you can't get it.
It's heavy. It's locking her in.
Be a good thinker. Fishy.
All that messaging is purposeful to the story that God is taking away the iniquity of the land and is locking it up. But that's not the end of the vision. Verse 9 and 10. I'm happy to read if you want. It says, "Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, 2 women coming forward. The wind was in their wings. They had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the basket between earth and heaven. Then I said to the angel who talked with me, 'Where are they taking the basket?' He said to me, 'To the land of Shinar, to build a house for it. And when this is prepared, they will set the basket down there on its base.'" It's not enough for God to lock up the iniquity of the land. It's interesting what it is that that's in this little section. You know, why do these women have wings? We get a whole description of them. You know, the wind was in their wings. They had wings like the wings of a stork. Does everyone? Sometimes when animals are mentioned, they're a little bit confusing.
No, I've got stork.
What does the New King James have?
Stork.
Okay, hey, we have agreement. So why do these women have wings? Why are they called women? I mean, usually if we're thinking angelic stuff, usually it's male.
But wickedness is quite often women. A woman, though, isn't it?
That's interesting.
The harlots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've asked the question, the 2 questions will relate to each other. What does Zechariah's question tell us about his understanding of these women? Because look what Zechariah questions. He asks where they're taking the basket. He doesn't ask, what are these women with wings? What does that suggest?
That's not the focus.
Or he knows what they are.
He knows what they are. So
They're not a strange thing to him.
he wants to know, are they going to come back?
Yeah, where are they taking the, so I do think that the women with wings is a picture of the angels, of God's angelic host doing something. So it's God doing it again. It's just fascinating that they're called women, and that might be in relation to the fact that there's a woman in the basket. But it's also fascinating that Zechariah doesn't care about who's taking them. He just cares about where it's being taken, where this basket's being taken to. So if the basket's being taken, I think this is why this is going to answer your question from earlier, Rob, about whether it's the land of Israel or the land of Babylon or the land of the whole earth. I think it's specifically the land of Israel, because the basket of iniquity is being taken away and being taken somewhere. If it was the face of the whole earth, then there's nowhere else for it to go other than, I think it's specifically God's land that's being addressed.
So is this basket of wickedness being taken back to Babylonia, where it came from?
Yeah. How does Shinar? That's why I've asked why Shinar fits the context for this vision. Shinar is Babylonian. Shinar is the land of Babylon.
Where did you get that from?
So verse 11 says when Zechariah asks where are they taking the basket, he says, to the land of Shinar, to build a house for it. Babylon is going to become the house of iniquity. Does that ring a bell when we're thinking, maybe I won't go there. Because there's a New Testament phrase that gets used a few times. It talks about the synagogue of Satan. It talks about the house of iniquity in parts of the New Testament. And I think it's referring back. It's a Babylonian picture. It's linking those two things. What does it mean for a house to be built for Israel's iniquity and for it to be in Babylon? Where
Babylon is traditionally the place of falsehood of deity, false deities. It's reputed to be, just this den of iniquity.
Yeah.
This come from It's come from the den of iniquity, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always been the centre of falsehood.
But mine doesn't say that.
What does yours say?
I'm going to build a shrine.
A shrine. Okay. Yep.
That means
That they're going to be worshipping it.
Well, they did that in the chapter 11 of
Yeah.
Genesis. They built
Yeah.
a tower.
It's connecting the, and I think that doesn't Genesis 11 mention the land of Shinar?
I know.
This would be the right direction to go in, going back in time to refer back to something. Yeah. Chapter 11 verse 2, as the people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there.
There you go.
Mm.
It is a direct connection to Babel.
And it goes, I will build a shrine for it in the land of Shinar. He told me when it is ready, the basket will be placed there on its pedestal.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's what mine says too.
Yeah.
Pedestal.
Raise it up.
It's going to be the focus of attention. Iniquity and wickedness, but specifically the iniquity and wickedness of the land of Israel is going to be the focus of Babylon.
Okay. So when will this be?
Yes. Are you asking a question that you told me I wasn't allowed to ask? About time? I think because Babylon is ultimately destroyed, God does visit the iniquity of Babylon upon Babylon, just like Jeremiah prophesied. And the city, the literal city of Babylon, is wiped out. It doesn't exist.
Do you know when that's going to happen, don't you?
Yes. However, but I'm also talking about in time the physical city. Babylon doesn't exist right now as a city, right?
It fizzled around
Yeah.
after Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
It is damaged, and then it fizzled out somewhat.
The more Rome took over.
Yeah.
It's a nothing now. You know, it doesn't exist, and so for the New Testament to hone in on the concept of Babylon, it's talking less about a physical city and more about a mindset.
It is
and
talking
about,
a mindset of what happened in Babylon
Yes.
rather than actual location
correct,
of Babylon.
correct. That's right, and this is part of that profile. This is building that profile of what Babylon.
This, so what do you start off with the first vision, Jim? It was a cleansing of the land?
Well, I think they're both doing it. They're talking about this is the process that God is going to utilize to cleanse the land of her iniquity. She's going to. Here's my big question. A just action would be for God to visit the iniquity of Israel upon Israel, for them to bear and carry their own iniquity. But he's removing their iniquity from them and putting it on Babylon.
God's a just God.
How?
Because he will not do that to his people. He's going to just judge the people who have infiltrated.
I'm going to say it's not just, it is gracious and merciful.
Yeah, well, it's still
It's
just.
not injustice.
No, it's not injustice. So what are you going to call it? Just?
No, I'm going to call it grace and mercy.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
You brought the word up.
Correct, but I'm saying for justice would be for Israel to bear their iniquity in their own, but he has already done that. He's put them into exile. He has visited their iniquity on them.
And the iniquity will.
So they've borne that. But now God is going, anything in the land, you're not going to go back to a land that's full of crookedness.
Oh.
And this is how he's, and when you think about the
Do you
Jeremiah.
do you believe this?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my.
Because Jeremiah prophesied that Babylon's iniquity would be visited upon itself, and this is part of that. Because God is using the crookedness of Babylon to visit the crookedness of Israel upon herself, and now he's going to use the crookedness of Israel to visit the crookedness of Babylon upon itself. It's not a new concept. It is all intertwined, and it's all part of God playing out his plan to reveal his character, that he is the one that does it. It's a really fascinating cycle. Who's got the greater avon? Well, Israel's still standing. It's Babylon that doesn't exist. Go, give me your thoughts.
No,
Yeah, why not?
no,
I want to be challenged. What have I got wrong?
no, because I have to go forward and it's not, we're not going to go forward. But I think you're right, it's talking about Israel's punishment was she lost the land, but she was taken exile.
That was the visiting of her iniquity upon her.
But Babylon is
Now God's visiting it upon her.
And when you look towards the end of the New Testament, it's Babylon in chapters, what,
17 and 18.
18
Yeah.
of Revelation.
That's right.
And what is it? Why do the people cry out and the merchant wail? Because Babylon is utterly destroyed.
Yeah. Babylon the Great is
Babylon is judged, Babylon makes a comeback, and Babylon gets destroyed again.
It's
Yeah.
destroyed again.
Yeah.
So what God is doing here is, that's why I said this is a
It's.
phenomenal passage. And like we've seen, it's there.
I didn't start seeing it until 6 o'clock this morning when I woke up and gave it more attention.
Because God's doing the whole thing. It's Him who does it. And who destroys Babylon in Revelation? It's God.
Yeah.
Not,
Through
it's not-
Christ.
It's God who's
Yeah.
going to bring down the storms. It's God who's going to bring down it.
So there's. Sorry.
Like all the others. God is in
Yeah.
all the other steps.
I'm literally not changing that last line.
No.
Everything that we're reading is fitting. This is God at work. God is preparing the people's hearts. God is preparing Jerusalem. God's choosing the high priest and setting the king apart. And now God's cleansing the land and removing its iniquity.
So having said all that, Israel slumped back into sin when they got back in the land.
Yeah.
So
And so guess who's going to have to fix it?
God will.
God will. There's no amount of effort of man that'll do it.
So in the present day climate, if Israel gets what she wants, she hasn't got back in the land.
No.
Because God is not king.
Amen. And we've seen that even here in Zechariah, where God's talking about He will be their king, Yahweh their king. It's a tremendous way to see this. And it's,
yes, well, the truth is Israel did take long to fall back into their old ways. Even when they got back into the land, they slumped back.
Every time when they've got back, they've gone back into their old ways. But when God cleanses it, oh no, that's not true, is
no.
it? Because even when God cleanses it in the millennium, what happens at the end?
Yeah. The physical universe has to be
It's
done away with.
Done away with.
Well, the cleansing the second time round will be when Jesus rules and reigns on earth.
We need to say there's a trinity of cleansings.
Probably could say that.
No, but I think that's we've got to see these patterns.
Do you know what?
It's an accurate pattern to see.
Why would it be accurate if it is that
Because
way?
there's 3 rebellions.
And 3. 7 is a perfect number, but 3 is the Trinity.
Yeah, 3 is the divine number, yeah. Everything happens in those 3, in those patterns of 3, and it's just.
And in this vision here, Israel's sin is gone, and so is Babylon. So it's all dealt with here.
Yeah. We got through that quickly, but that's good.
But it's straightforward though. Oh, maybe.
The thing is, it's straightforward when you're painting the picture. If we had started in Zechariah 5 and said, oh, let's just randomly do the vision, we're not getting it. We're just not getting it. There's no way we're seeing it in this pattern, seeing it in this flow of thought, and realizing that God is building the profile and preparing His people to return home.
Well, that's Bible. That's how you read the Bible.
That's how people don't read the
But
Bible,
it's
though.
how you read the Bible.
Yeah.
There's no isolated verses,
No.
but it's a story.
So on another note, some people say Babylon's actually going to be rebuilt.
I don't.
Comment?
Yeah, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility, but I don't think the scripture requires it.
But my answer to that question is, so what?
Yeah.
You can build it 1,000,000 times and God will
Because
keep
I've got the
it
same.
down.
It's this. As far as I'm concerned, it's the same with the temple being rebuilt.
Yeah.
There's texts that indicate that it should be, but if it doesn't and everything still happens, I don't think the scriptures require it, because there is a close connection between the temple and the spiritual temple. There is a close connection. And so there's the thing with prophecy in all things is there is a purposeful masking, veiling of the literal outplay. That's what it was with the messianic prophecies. The only reason we see them so clearly is because Christ has come. And so the New Testament writings are looking back at the Old Testament going, we didn't see it like this. The Isaiah prophecy of the virgin shall conceive and bear a son. They don't think messianically about that until Matthew writes that, or until Jesus reveals it in his own person, because it was a sign for the king of the day. It wasn't. There's a number of messianic prophecies, and we say, look at the hundreds of messianic prophecies that were fulfilled, but we only see that fulfillment in hindsight. There's only a handful of prophecies that the Second Temple rabbis understood to speak about the coming Messiah. The time, so the 70 weeks of Daniel, the place of his birth. What were some of the other things that come up in, when the wise men go to Herod and ask where this king of the Jews, they're able to go back and say, he's going to be born in Bethlehem.
But the penny should have dropped when they read Isaiah 53.
Absolutely.
It says
The penny should have dropped at many.
It says that, the experts in the Old Testament in Israel should have.
They should have known, but they did know there was a king going to be born. Because they sent them.
Well, they were waiting so intensely at that time because, like I said, the 70 weeks of Daniel, the return from captivity, and the 69 weeks until Messiah will be cut off, they were there. They were in that time slot.
And they're still waiting. And every time at the end of the Passover week, they close with next year in Jerusalem. They're still waiting.
Maybe you should go to Jerusalem and explain the Daniel 9, 26, 27 prophecy of the 70 weeks.
The 70 weeks.
No, it's great to go through all that.
It's no problem that we've got it to the state we are, because we've got to look at this from Jewish part. But then we've had all these Christian interpretations of it, so we're just confused in a sense, unless you want to go back to what is written and keep to the text.
Yeah.
And especially Reformation time, when doctrine and the scriptures were looked at as kind of like Bible stories and parables and application to life, and they didn't look at the history.
No.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what they said about the prophecy of Isaiah in 53:5. It says that he was bruised for our iniquities.
He was
I
bruised for
presume
our
that
wrong.
they would say that Israel was bruised.
Yeah.
That's wrong. That's what they say, Rob. Israel, this is us. See, we've just seen it. Look at us. We've been bruised all these years.
Oh, poor me.
Let's look at that.
And it's fascinating that that's the word that's there, is iniquity. It's a bone.
It's been bruised for our iniquity.
For our crookedness.
Crookedness. We just keep. So can believers transgress?
Yes.
What
Yeah,
word they
transgress is a different word.
Well, what was the word we used?
Can they? Yeah. Can they be crooked?
Can they commit iniquity? Yes.
They can. But he puts us right. Straight. It's funny, we've got the slang phrase, isn't it? It will straighten you out.
Can we straighten him out?
Yeah, we'll straighten him out. He's got a crooked way of thinking. We need to straighten him out. That's direct. That's conceptual to this. We do use the language. We just don't recognise that word.
Yeah. I always think of, you can see when something is crooked when you put a straight one next to it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can tell what's proper and what's not when they're put side by side. There's other concepts that use those words, isn't there? It's interesting. Well, thank you for that. I think that's
We did the whole chapter.
we did. Well, it was only 10 verses long, so.
Don't discourage us. We did